and we have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Welcome to Gay USA. I'm Andy Hum.
I'm Ann Northrup.
And we have a special guest for our last half hour. You are going to want to stay tuned for two-time Academy Award winner Lee Grant about her new autobiography, I Said Yes to Everything.
The interview is passionate, grim, funny, everything. So that'll be the last half hour of the show. Stay tuned for that. In news this week, New York State is opening Medicaid to transgender people who need gender reassignment surgery.
The Boston St. Patrick's Day Parade has agreed to admit a group of gay veterans.
The cafe manager in Australia who fought the hostage taker was a gay man.
And I'm going to review a couple of plays, The Elephant Man and Samuel D. Hunter's new play. He's an out gay playwright.
We will now zip through the news, so we have time for the interview with Lee, which we recorded yesterday.
Yes.
All right, New York State opening Medicaid to transgender people.
The governor, Cuomo, says if a doctor has deemed that the treatment is medically necessary, Medicaid has got to provide it, and he's also told insurers that they have to cover this.
Exactly. Previously, insurers had encoded, for instance, mastectomies for male transgender people as cosmetic surgery, which of course it is not. It is medically necessary.
Right.
And we have to thank, we enjoy thanking State Senator Brad Hoylman for pushing these new policies through. He's been very good about sticking to this.
New York's not the first state to do this. It's just a big one.
Yeah, well, we're rarely the first on anything. And we'll see what happens with the U.S. military. Air Force Secretary Deborah Lee Games was asked about the ban on transgender service in the military. She says it's likely to come under review in the next year or so.
On the other hand, a step back in Massachusetts, where the First Circuit, a court of appeals, overruled an order mandating medically necessary gender reassignment surgery for an incarcerated woman, Michelle Koselleck.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes, a lower court decision had said it was okay, and this is a reversal. The court said, she's getting hormones, that's enough. Of course, she's in the male part of the prison, and that stands, and it's crazy.
Well, some of our groups are starting to complain. We told you about the executive order of President Obama's finally being, going to be put into effect about covering contractors so they can't discriminate on the basis of sexual orientation and gender identity and expression. But groups are saying that it's vague, the rules that are being promulgated, especially on transition-related health care and how sex-segregated facilities will be treated. So we're on it.
Yeah. And as all this is debated, in Albany, Georgia, another transgender woman was shot dead on a street.
Kimori Shatoya Johnson. It's the 12th homicide of a trans woman of color this year, according to the National Center for Anti-Violence Projects. They do have a suspect in that case, though.
In Chicago, they're mourning the death of a transgender activist, Joy Morris.
We have a picture of her.
Died of cancer. What's particularly appealing, she was a relentless activist. She created the famous Legends Lunch All-Star Awards, also an activist as someone who was HIV positive. What's so cute about this picture is that's the governor she's got her arm around and being very forceful with. And
he looks very happy.
He does look happy, but I think that's a very charming picture of Joy Morris with the governor of Illinois.
On to other things.
In Texas, legislators are rushing to file religious exemption bills after the non-discrimination bill passed in Plano, Texas last week, even though that was a miserable excuse for a non-discrimination bill. But, God help us if we get any non-discrimination bills. They're right in there to get rid of them. The ACLU held a conference call this last week that I was on where they talked about the fact that they are tracking all these attempts to pass religious exemption bills, and they're really gung-ho on getting them stopped or overturned.
Well, one of the ancient discriminations has been by St. Patrick's Day parades in Boston. They won the right at the Supreme Court to discriminate against gay groups, but this year they're saying they're going to let a group of called out vets. It's somewhat a breaking of the ban on gay contingents. The group says it has no political or social agenda. Well, we just happen to be gay. Oh, why bother? But anyway, the vote was 5-4 in the committee.
Yeah, there's someone who's claiming they didn't have a quorum and the vote is illegal. Stay tuned for that. But this group was the first out gay group to march in the recent Veterans Day parade in Boston. They do march with rainbow stripes on their banner, but they're not an Irish group.
Right.
The fight we're having in New York,
which we want an Irish gay group in the parade, and they're only letting NBC's gay group in.
Well, at least it isn't NBC.
Bobby Jindal, the Louisiana governor, who once said the Republicans shouldn't be the stupid party, he's hosting an event for the American Family Association, which blames the Holocaust on gay people, among other outrages by the American Family Association.
All right. In Florida, a senior lecturer at the Florida State University College of Business has resigned because she was found making racist, homophobic comments on Twitter or Facebook or something. Take your northern faggot elitism and shove it up your you-know-what.
Well, the lead witness in the Ferguson case that got the cop off the hook, Officer Wilson off the hook, has been found to be a big racist.
Exactly.
And a liar.
Yeah. In Alabama, someone managed to get a license plate that said no homo, N-O-H-O-M-O. However, the state, having had this brought to their attention, said, oh, well, maybe that shouldn't be out there, and they have recalled the license plate. Mm-hmm. In D.C., the out gay principal of Woodrow Wilson High School that we showed you earlier this year, Peter Cahill, has had his contract not renewed as of the end of this year. In the middle of the
not getting your test scores up.
Yeah, exactly. Didn't move the school forward academically. He regards this decision as arbitrary and capricious, but looks forward to another job somewhere soon. And in other school news, Randy Weingarten, the out gay head of the teachers union, came forward in the context of all these charges of rape at colleges, and then the victims being questioned about their authenticity, said, I've never talked about this publicly, but I was the victim of an attempted rape in college.
Yes.
And actually, while I was a summer while I was in college, and I was interning somewhere.
Right.
A little stunning. And Walter Williams, the former professor at USC who'd been charged with going to Southeast Asia for sex trafficking, the Philippines specifically, has been sentenced to 5 years in federal prison, has to register as a sex offender, has to pay $25,000 restitution.
Do not pass go. Do not collect $200.
Ooh, and Larry Kramer's book is coming out, The American People, that he's
Just
been...
part one. And 777 pages. It's centered on a family in Washington. He grew up there, I think. Right?
April.
Yeah.
Pre-register with Amazon. Volume 2 will be out in 2016. Volume 1 is The American People Search for My Heart. It's called a novel.
Yes, it is a novel.
But it's all very real, I think. And...
Well, when I told him that, a story about confirming Ed Koch was homosexual, he said, it's going right in my book. And of course, Koch's former gay aide, Herb Rickman, we just learned that he died in October. He was, I have to say, a miserable character, and he actually pimped for the mayor. I mean, I'm not exaggerating. That's what he did for him. He was a very, very, difficult person, dead at 82.
In brighter news, there is a fascinating study out of UCLA and printed in the journal Science. Done out of the LA LGBT Center after Prop 8.
Well, it was studying what happened during Prop 8 and the kinds of interactions that canvassers had when they went door to door, and they did an actual controlled study.
Yes.
And, talk about one issue, talk about another issue, don't talk at length, do talk at length.
Who does the talking, straight or gay? And what they found with a pretty controlled study was that when gay people talk one-on-one, in person to person, face to face with people who are opposed to same-sex marriage, say, or who are anti-gay, they can change people's minds.
And not only can they change people's minds, and they say these interactions take about 20 minutes, not only can they change people's minds, but that can affect the rest of the family,
yes,
they found.
It gets passed along. So we tell you about this because we know you are going to be home with your families at the holidays or talking to people, and to encourage you that it is not a bad idea in the right circumstances. We're not promoting confrontations, but if you see an opening for a reasonable conversation, it can actually make a difference and be very useful. And we found that in the work we did for Hetrick Martin when we would go out to schools and to, hi, I'm your local lesbian. It really does make a difference to have a calm, respectful conversation with people that's honest.
And I hope when you have, actually we used to, and I don't know if this is still true, but we actually did not recommend choosing the holiday to make that your coming out. Pass the gravy, I'm gay.
I'm not talking about coming out. I'm talking about
that's a conversation too.
As an out gay person, having a conversation. Because so many of these conversations get shortcut. People don't have the conversation. They just all sit there avoiding the conversation.
Yeah. Some people do come out at the holidays because that's when they see their families and they want to do it face to face.
Well, I did it in a letter.
Yeah, well, okay. I had a boyfriend who was coming back in the car to the airport after, and he still hadn't told his mother. And I said, you got to tell your mother. And he says, what is I going to have more trouble facing you or her? So I told her. I said, oh, good. I said, how'd it go? Not well. But they're all happy now. It's 30 years later, they're all together now.
How long did it take each of us to come to terms with it? We have to give our families a little leeway.
Yes, of course. We do.
And maybe we'll give PFOX a little leeway. The Parents and Friends of Ex-Gays, they put up a billboard in Richmond, Virginia saying, nobody is born gay, which would make me very angry if I drove by it on the highway.
And they used twins on the billboard, but it wasn't really twins. It was the same actor. It was a model that it turns out from South Africa, and they must have taken the picture about 15 years ago or something.
Yeah, it was just a stock photo.
So he goes on TV and he says, I'm gay and I'm quite happy.
We are everywhere.
That doesn't matter. That doesn't change the point.
Be a little more careful in who you use. All right, marriage news.
All right. Well, in Florida, the Attorney General there, Pam Bondi, thrice married, is doing all she can from letting gay Floridians marry once. There's a case with a stay that ends on January 6th there, but she's gone to Clarence Thomas and asking for that to be extended.
He's in charge of cases from the 11th Circuit, so he is considering whether or not to extend the stay.
Can he do it on his own?
Yes, he can. He can do it on his own, or he can refer to the full court. And since he has been making statements about being angry at the court for not imposing stays in these cases.
The rest of the court can't intervene then and say, wait a minute, hold on.
Maybe our side could appeal to the fuller court, but he is entitled to make his own decision.
Well, the clerks there in the state were warned that they could face criminal charges if they issue licenses, and I say bring it on.
Well, the deal is that the case under consideration concerns just one county and maybe even one clerk. So if the stay is lifted and marriages are allowed to be issued by that clerk or that county, it doesn't necessarily apply to the other counties. Andy is recommending civil disobedience.
Okay.
I'm in favor of that too, but that's the
couple
issue.
Of marriages to note. We have a picture of Martina Navratilova with her whole family. She married her longtime partner, Julia Lemigova, in New York. Martina has been out since '81, and she says she's surprised no gay male pros in tennis have come out. They're so far in the closet, I don't even know who they are.
But those are her stepdaughters with her partner. In Montana, there are clerks who don't want to issue marriage licenses to same-sex couples. I have religious reasons. God tells me not to do this. So the Yellowstone County Commissioner in Billings says sorry, you're a public servant. You must treat everyone the same and provide equal protection to everybody under the law. Well, the Yellowstone County commissioners are fighting the county clerk and trying to find a way to exempt those people from handing out licenses.
Well, if Jeb Bush becomes president, he may give them a break. He is said to be sincere in his opposition to same-sex marriage and abortion rights. This according to a leader of the Southern Baptist Convention who met with him. He wants to be your president, this Mr. Bush. Remember them.
The Attorney General of Tennessee is making the argument to the Supreme Court that I have feared someone would make. And he has become the first to ask the Supreme Court not to take the Sixth Circuit cases, Tennessee, Kentucky, Ohio, and Michigan.
This is the only Court of Appeals case that we've lost so far.
Yes. And everybody on both sides in the other states has said the Supreme Court should take the cases and make a decision for the country.
So Tennessee has thrown a wrench in the works.
Well, he hasn't thrown a wrench in the works. He's just submitted his arguments to the Supreme Court. And what he's saying is, you don't have to make a decision for the whole country. We can have different laws in different states, so we can have no marriage here and marriage there. And that is one of my my nightmare scenarios for the Supreme Court. But we'll see. We'll see whose arguments they buy.
Right.
And the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid have proposed a rule that all legal same-sex spouses be treated equally within their systems everywhere. In hospitals, in hospice care, in nursing homes, for all medical decision-making or whatever. They want the legal same-sex spouses to be respected no matter where they were married, no matter where they're living, whether the state they're living in respects their marriage or not. For the federal Medicaid and Medicare system, they want equal treatment everywhere. That would be great.
All right, we've got
International.
Well, we'll start with a marriage note. Elton John and David Furnish are finally marrying after already being civilly partnered. They've been together a long time.
Yes, they're getting married in Windsor, where they live in England, December 21st. They've been together for 21 years. They have 2 kids, and as you say, they are already into civil partnership.
Ireland is going to have its referendum on same-sex marriage in early May. The polls say that 3/4 of the people there support it, so we'll see how the vote goes.
We will. That sounds very encouraging, but we've seen polls like that here that turned out not to be predictive.
Not 3/4.
No,
I never saw a poll like that here.
Well, you know,
Not even in New York.
We thought we were going to defeat Prop 8, and we didn't.
No.
Scotland.
Yep.
You can now convert civil partnerships to marriage, and and they had the first ceremony of that actually in the British consulate in Melbourne, Australia.
So those people are married.
Time zone,
but the new marriages, if you haven't been married, if you haven't had a civil partnership, you got to wait till New Year's Eve, which is a big day in Scotland for another reason.
Which shall remain secret.
Yes.
Yeah. Some stories out of Russia. In St. Petersburg, Russia, a lesbian music teacher has been fired from her job teaching special ed kids, for which she's received many awards. They say that just by being a lesbian, she has performed an immoral act under their laws, so she is out of a job.
And an LGBT group there in a city there is the first to be labeled as a foreign agent, which is tantamount to, shutting them down. And the whole country is, of course, going under. Does that make us happy? Do you think they'll wake up to that the fact that their fascism is holding them back, and that's why their economy is collapsing?
Well, that's a question. Will the collapsing economy hurt Putin, or will it embolden Putin to get even worse? Well, Human Rights Watch has a new report out that says the violence against LGBT people in Russia is increasing.
Now, you all read about a lot of horrible stories, like the story out of Pakistan where all those kids were killed, and but there is a gay angle on the Sydney siege in Australia, where a cafe was taken over by a lone wolf, a crazy guy terrorist. The manager of the cafe, Tory Johnson, we have a picture of him. He's the guy who tackled, apparently, the hostage taker as he shot at fleeing hostages, was credited with saving lives, and he was killed himself. Is a gay man with a partner of 14 years, Thomas Zinn. And He's also the son of Australian artist Ken Johnson.
Now, the problem is marriage is not legal in Australia. His surviving partner may be short some benefits. This may move along the discussion of marriage in Australia or not. There are some media outlets that never mentioned the partner. And the right wing is claiming he was reckless. He got himself and the other woman killed by attacking the hostage taker. So even in death and heroism, the right wing cannot let up on us.
Right.
In the Philippines, the U.S. Marine who's accused of killing the Philippine transgender woman has been formally charged with murder. She was beaten up and drowned in a toilet. So
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
In Taiwan, 3,500 took part in a rainbow run for same-sex marriage and equal rights. I think we're going to get it there.
We'll see. It's looking good. And the sit-in ended in Seoul, Korea, at City Hall after the group met with the mayor, the LGBT group. He apologized for causing pain. He promised to fix the problem. He doesn't want discrimination for anyone. But the activists are saying the apology is inadequate. He hasn't signed or issued the charter yet, so the fight continues.
In Venezuela, one of the leading same-sex marriage activists, Ginny Soto, was murdered, struck by someone stealing her car. It doesn't seem to be a hate crime per se.
But she's a big loss to the movement. She was an important person there.
That's right.
Controversy in France, where the vice president of the extreme right-wing group, the Front National, was outed by a magazine. He is suing the magazine.
Yeah.
And, there seems to be some controversy, but he was, he was seen publicly holding hands with his partner, and he's a public figure.
The Pope says pets can go to heaven, but not homosexual pets, and certainly not unrepentant gay people.
Finland, the parliament has taken its second required vote, and by a vote of 101 to 90 has given final approval to same-sex marriage in Finland, although they still say it's going to take a year to get all the laws in place.
The International League for Human Rights in Berlin has awarded its annual medal to Edward Snowden and out gay reporter Glenn Greenwald for exposing abuses of power in the United States and Germany.
In Tel Aviv, they have unveiled a new monument, a little pink triangle monument that is a tribute to LGBT people killed in the Holocaust. We have a little picture of that. There it is. Okay. And this is the first acknowledgement in Israel of, I believe, of LGBT people killed by the Nazis. Human Rights Campaign is asking President Obama to refuse a visa to the president of Gambia, who hates us and has been saying horrible things about us. Turns out he has a $3.5 million home in Potomac, Maryland, that he visits frequently.
America, home of retired dictators.
Yeah. All right, AIDS news.
Well, there's a study about PrEP from the Kaiser Permanente. They studied 500 users of pre-exposure prophylaxis, and there were no new infections. But they also found that condom use was declining, and of course that could lead to other infections. So you kind of have to do both.
Which is interesting.
You don't have to do anything. Well, it'd be nice if you did both.
The federal court has now said that the law in California mandating condom use in porn is okay, not a violation of the First Amendment. Although if people are now on PrEP,
and the porn business is leaving LA.
Yeah. And a study out of the United Kingdom says that those most likely to transmit HIV are young HIV-positive men who don't know they have it and aren't on treatment. And are mostly in ongoing relationships. Again, an argument for testing. The bad funding bill passed by the Congress does include more money for AIDS work internationally, which is a good thing. And a lot of Democrats, including Elizabeth Warren and Tammy Baldwin, are asking that the donation by gay men of blood, the ban be lifted. Change to a risk-based assessment instead of homophobia. Entertainment news. Congratulations to Janet Mock, transgender activist, hired by Entertainment Tonight as a special correspondent.
And 2 new gay series to watch out for on Logo, which is no longer a gay station. in early 2015, I think in January, from Russell Davies, who originated Queer as Folk. One is Cucumber, focuses on a gay couple together for 9 years, and the other called Banana, about
subtle.
about younger gay people in their circle.
I bet it's mostly men.
Set in Manchester,
Cucumber and Banana.
like looking. I have reviews of 2 plays, The Elephant Man and Pocatello, with both about outsiders. I wasn't fond of.
You have a few seconds.
Well, they are about outsiders, and you want to get it. But I mean, my full reviews. You can write to me at AndyHum@AOL and be on our email list.
There's
and I will,
Bradley Cooper as the Elephant Man.
as the Elephant Man. And the acting, and that's the scene from Pocatello, which takes place in a chain restaurant in Pocatello, Idaho. T.R. Knight, the out gay actor, is in the center of the scene there. But I mean, Elephant Man is an old play, which I didn't find it that compelling. I think the performances are good, and the same thing in Pocatello. This is Samuel D. Hunter's new play.
Genius grant and
everything, but it was not a scintillating evening. But again, what I have to say more fully, you can write to me, and I will send it to you in our email.
We have succeeded in hopscotching through the news quickly enough to present the entire interview we have coming up.
Because now my old friend Ann Northrup and I are going to talk with her old friend Lee Grant.
I'm so thrilled and honored to have my friend Lee Grant here as a guest today. We've known each other for more than 40 years.
Oh my God.
Off and on. How old am I?
Yeah.
How old is she?
Well,
How old are you?
Oh, we're not talking about that today.
All right. Well, she's got a fantastic new book out, an autobiography, I Said Yes to Everything. And believe me, everything, or almost everything, is in this book. You said you cut 500 pages out, so we're waiting for volume 2. But just to take a little stroll through your life before we start dishing about Hollywood, let's do a little biographical stuff. Yeah, you started out at 4 in dancing on the stage of the Metropolitan Opera. I think we have a picture. Oh, yes. Very talented.
Very charming.
But you made your first big hit in the play Detective Story, later turned into a movie for which you were nominated for an Academy Award and won the Best Actress Award at Cannes, and did that as a movie with Kirk Douglas. But you were an ingenue who played a rough part, in fact took the part that was supposed to be an older woman and said, I'll do it. And then became the hit of everything, and then, of course, the Blacklist hit. But then you came back and you did In the Heat of the Night with Sidney Poitier, another big hit, and, of course, the favorite of the gay community, Valley of the Dolls. There you are with Sharon Tate. And then my favorite, The Landlord, which was just spectacular. If you haven't seen The Landlord, you have to see that. Just incredible. You did a lot of movie guest shot, TV guest shots. We have a shot from Columbo. There you are. I think that was the pilot.
It was the pilot.
Yeah.
It was the 2-hour pilot.
Yeah. And then, of course, Shampoo, for which you finally won an Academy Award. There you are with Warren Beatty.
Your first Academy Award.
Yes. More about that in a moment. And after a long movie and TV career, you then did a career switch to doing documentaries and biographical films for Lifetime. We have a shot of you with Princess Grace, which is a fascinating story in the book. And you ended up winning a second Academy Award for a documentary, Down and Out in America, that is so relevant today. It's astonishing.
Yes, I know.
So it's just been a hell of a life, and I'm thrilled to know you and thrilled to have you here. And there are a million things we want to talk about. But first, about writing the book, because you didn't set out to write a book. You're not a writer.
No, well, I was like at the point where I was forgetting things. Now I had already had a problem remembering names, because in the 50s I was called in front of the House Un-American Activities Committee. I was married to a communist, and they wanted me to name him.
Right.
That was the necessity if you were to work. If I wanted to work in film or television in the 50s, I had to name someone in front of the Un-American Activities Committee. And what happened in one of their kind of rehearsals for the committee was that I named 2 women who were not communists, who were not anybody that they wanted.
It was almost a joke, your name.
It was a joke, my name, and I said I had coffee with them and that we went to a dress shop. But I realized going back home that I had said 2 names that could inadvertently be hurt, be blacklisted. I start to, you know, just get tight in my throat just thinking about the realization. I burst into my house to my husband and I said, I gave names. He said, what do you mean? And I said these 2 girls' names, and he said, you didn't give names. And I was told by other friends who I went to, you didn't give names. But the fear that I could stop someone from having a career, from working in the theater, into the film, or any place where they wanted to work, became so great that when I went to introduce one friend to another the next week, I couldn't say their names.
Wow.
And I started to, and I couldn't. And that's followed me through the rest of my life. I didn't have a problem at that time with my lines or with anything else, but when it came to introducing anybody, the names just went out of my head.
And you
so writing the book became an exercise in memory for you.
It was maybe my memory's going. Maybe at this point, and I'm afraid to talk about it with friends, but maybe it's not just the names, maybe it's everything. And so I sat down at my makeup table, actually, and the first scene that came to me was when I was up in our summer place with our 3 children, and I got a call saying, I want you for a play from a very, very good director. And I called my husband and I said, I'm wanted for a play. And he said, if you take it, we're through. I'll take the children and separate. That was what I wrote first. And it was so emotional and so cathartic for me to see where I was at that time, that it wasn't just the film industry and the television industry that was telling me I couldn't work, but my husband was saying to me, I am busy working. If you take this play, we are no longer together. And it broke open such a sense of life-saving for myself. I knew that I had to save my own life at that point. And so I left him. I had a face job. I had a facelift because...
Very early on.
Yes, I was 30. And maybe not even. And I knew I had to save myself. I had to play an ingenue in this play. I had to play a girl in her 20s, and I didn't look like it. I looked sad. I looked bad. I looked, glum. And so it was like switching something on in my life that said, save yourself, save yourself.
And you talk in the book about having a relatively or very apolitical childhood. You were not, the family, you said, didn't even read the daily newspaper.
No, we were Democrats. We were very, we were Roosevelt.
Right.
He was the king.
But very cultured. I mean, you were ballet, the Art Students League, Juilliard, all the acting schools, all the great teachers. You were involved in all that stuff. That's what you came out of, a very cultured environment. And then you were, you got a leading Broadway role. And then you were thrust into this whole political thing. And you're very candid in the book. And look, I don't come at this from someone with this great ideology that I was trying to put forth. It's just that I was trying to be a decent human being and not hurt people.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, it's an irony that you suffered this blacklisting as someone who wasn't particularly political, but you've become much more political coming out of that and in later life.
Yeah.
And we might as well tell people the story of basically why they went after you. You spoke at a memorial service.
Yeah.
Talk about that.
J. Edward Bromberg, was a great character actor. He was from the group theater. And I was in a play with him on Broadway that my future husband wrote. And these were all refugees from the blacklist in Hollywood. And they were bringing a play to New York in the hopes that they could start another career. As so many of those refugees, the Ring Lardner Jr. and
Dalton Trumbo.
Dalton Trumbo had come to New York to start a career over. And Joe Bromberg said to me in the wings, I don't think my heart can take it. The Un-American Activities Committee is calling me to go in front of them again, and I can't take it. And he went to London and did a play and had a heart attack. And so this huge memorial, maybe 3,000 people showed up at the Edison Hotel on Broadway. And they asked me, as a young ingenue, actually, on Broadway, to say a few words since I'd worked with him. And I said that I felt that he had died and had a heart attack because of his fear of the Un-American Activities Committee. And 2 days later, I was at an equity union meeting, and an actor in front of me said, "You made the list." And I said, "What list?" And he showed me I was on Red Channels, and they had my remarks from the memorial. And from that day, for 12 years, I couldn't work in film or television.
And for the benefit of our younger viewers, we
Yeah.
should explain Red Channels was a magazine that listed people. It was a business, basically. You could pay to get off it.
Yeah.
They wanted you to name other names to get off it, those kinds of things. And the industry, film and television industry, just laid down and said, "Fine, well, we just won't use these people. It's too dicey for us."
Well, it was the advertisers. They were scared. They were threatened. This guy upstate, when I did sneak on to a daytime show, which was so much fun, he put in front of the Colgate toothpaste ad, "Do you want to buy this toothpaste from a company that hires commies?"
Right.
So they had to fire me because they tied the whole blacklist to the product.
And basically also for the benefit of our younger viewers, since communism is basically dead, for a long time now, and for the most part,
Putin?
What?
Putin. We're not happy with Putin running Russia these days.
KGB.
Well, Stalin, Putin, you take your choice.
Right.
I mean, both of them were killers.
So what was it in this country? We'd been allies of Russia in World War II. What was it that just made this the thing that you couldn't have anything to do with?
I wasn't political enough to know. I didn't know why these things were happening. My education was in unfairness. I had that when I was a kid, and I had it during that period when I saw them take people just like me, who were not communists, who were, fighting for their existence and standing up and saying, what are you doing? And getting blacklisted the next day. And that was the impetus after my acting career finished to go into documentaries, because there is an unfairness in life that I relate to, and I was certainly part of it for 12 years.
So when you look at what's happening these days with the Tea Party and the presidency of George Bush, Dick Cheney, now we have Ted Cruz coming down.
Iraq.
Yeah.
Iraq. I mean, to remember that Dick Cheney, that poisonous man, said this is the thing to do to Bush, who always was like, the good guy. I want to do the right thing. We won the war. Remember him on the troop ship?
Accomplished.
Mission accomplished there in his fatigues.
Right.
I mean, You couldn't do that on Saturday Night Live. You know, I mean, it was so crazy.
Grotesque.
But to go into Iraq and to get rid of a dictator and have the country split so that ISIS can just come in and take that whole Mideast apart.
Well, given your experience with the blacklist and the years of that kind of thing, and you look at the world now, which I feel often pessimistic about and think the human race is driving itself to extinction very fast. What's your perspective? Are you scared, or do you see any optimism? Are there things that make you feel joyful and optimistic, or are we all going to hell in a handbasket?
I think we are going to hell in a handbasket. What the problem that I see is that the majority of the people who feel like us, this all over the world, see the corruption, see that corporations are moving in there on their oil, on all of the things, on their wood, on their forests. And when they object to it, there is such a dictatorship on top in all of these countries that they're punished, they're put in jail, they're killed.
Exactly.
And these roving bands of children with Kalashnikovs, how do you pronounce it, with machine guns. These roving bands of children are given food by the leaders, whatever the ISIS thing is in each country we're talking about. And the loss of a real government in any of these places that cares about the people and is just kidnapping, killing, beheading. It's, what's the word I'm looking for where there is no there?
I don't know what the word is, but I take your image. So now I want to do a 90-degree turn because it's Christmas.
Yeah. Okay.
And Hanukkah and everything else. So, because a lot of this book is sex, drugs, and movies. And you knew everyone, and you were in all these great movies. And a lot of the book is about drugs in Malibu and sex with a few people. So how was that life for you? Were you having fun? Was it?
Well, I think I say it in the book. The reason why I'm stressing the darkness that my life went into is that getting the job of Peyton Place in Malibu.
That's got to come back on TV.
Oh, yes, and it's got to come back.
Let's explain. This was a television series, sort of an evening soap opera, a primetime soap opera, 64, or mid-60s. You came on in 66, I believe.
Yes, probably. But that soap opera, that Peyton Place, oh, God, you have to look to Homeland to see the kind of audience, you know, that was.
Yes.
Because it was on 3 times a week. And 3/4 of America was Peyton Place. I mean, they couldn't wait for it. And as a matter of fact, I went to the theater last year to see something, and someone turned to me and said, Stella? Stella Chernak? Stella Chernak?
It wasn't Tennessee Williams.
No.
It peeled the lid off the suburbs. It had Ryan O'Neal, Mia Farrow.
Oh, yes.
You know,
Barbara Parkins.
Barbara Parkins. I mean, the most gorgeous young people in the world. And everybody. I had it in the book that I went to a shoe store on the weekend, and the clerk came over to me, and he said, the lady there who's getting her shoes just wants to know, isn't today your father's funeral? And I said, that's why I'm getting the shoes. I'm on my way. There was such a belief in everything that was happening on Peyton Place. And for me, to go from the city and the darkness of whatever life was, and trying to support my daughter, Dinah Manoff, who was 8 at the time, to land in Malibu, with a Bank of America over my, and in the colony, in Malibu colony, to run on the beach, to have the sunshine all the time, to have people just slosh around in, shorts and sunburn, and Dorothy, who was the lead?
Malone.
Dorothy Malone was across the road. Ryan O'Neal was up the street. Lana Turner, who none of you will remember, big movie star. They were all down the street. I mean, it was like, what?
And all smoking pot together.
And all smoking pot together.
But this was after a period, and I don't want to skip over it, this was after a period of darkness. And you don't just talk about the heart attack of Mr. Bromberg, who you spoke at his funeral. You said a lot of those people died of heart attacks. Their lives were so bleak, your lives.
And young, and they
Yes.
died young.
But you did stand up to it. You didn't just slink away. You immediately organized people in my union, the AFTRA, and to stand up, because the union leaders were giving names to the blacklist
Yes.
people, and you stood up and you won.
Yes,
At
we
that,
won.
at that union meeting. So you did that in the
Yes.
beginning. You didn't just slink away.
No, that was my college. The blacklist, I am very grateful to in only that way, that it plunged me into a situation where you really had to make a decision. You're in it for the long haul, and you fight. And at a certain point, I got a call to be on a show, and I said, I can't. And look down your list. I'm blacklisted, so don't call me. And I was so involved with getting rid of the people who blacklist and getting in John Henry Falk's group that he got together. And of course, he was blacklisted for it.
Well, yeah.
But to get those people out of there became my mission, and it was mission accomplished.
So was it then?
Thank you.
Yes.
You're welcome.
So surrealism in everyday life, you end up on the stage of the Academy Awards winning for Shampoo, which was that a satisfying feeling? Was it strange? Was it, what was that?
It was interesting because when they said my name, I leaned forward and congratulated Lily Tomlin, I heard Lily Tomlin. It couldn't have been me, And she said, Lee, she was wearing a little diamond crown, Lee, they said your name.
Well, you were wearing like lilies of the valley in your hair.
and a
I was
wedding
wearing
dress.
my wedding dress. I had rented an old lace dress. It was so old-fashioned and awful, but I loved it. And I was wearing flowers in I was getting married, and I was marrying Oscar.
Yeah.
And but I felt a kind of peace as I walked up there and was enveloped with this love, with this appreciation,
No, keep going. That's just someone else.
with this approval, like my mother.
But you did say in one of your interviews subsequently that you felt this was in some ways going to be the end of a life that
Yes.
you knew. Why was that? You won an Oscar. Why did you feel that was some sort of an end?
Well, because I was an older actress. And I knew that I would not get the kind of parts that I had been getting. That there was no place to go but into being a lawyer to the stars, that kind of, that I was a hungry actress. I adore my profession. I adore the family of actors. And I knew that I was going to be slipping in the prestige of the work I'd done, and I loved my work, and I loved the things that I did.
And I don't want to skip over Shampoo completely, because there's something that happened there that is very illustrative of women standing up for themselves when you were in the film. It's with Warren Beatty. He's a younger hairdresser, and you're a somewhat slightly older woman who is, having it on with him. But there came to a scene that you had to do with him, and you hated the way he wasn't the director, but he was telling you it had to be done this way. What did you do, and why?
I quit. I went home with a raging headache.
But why were you upset?
Well, there was a scene coming up where I've just come back with rollers in my hair under a scarf, so attractive,
Very.
in my mink, and Warren has just had an affair with my daughter, who was Carrie Fisher, and Warren said to me, and I opened the door, and the scene goes that I see him with my daughter, and then I take him upstairs, and he said to me, when you open the door and see me there, you don't know that I've had anything to do with her. And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, I know this for a fact, that women don't see what they don't want to see. Yes, they just don't. And he gave me a couple of examples of women who walked in on him with other women and didn't see it. And then I went in, I opened the door, I saw him with Carrie, and then we were through for the day. We were finished for the day. And I went home and I thought, I can't put up with this. I really can't. If this is going to happen on every scene, that he's going to tell me what I think, what I see when I open a door. I mean, this is an invasion of my actor's privacy that no director I've worked with has ever done. All my good directors has ever said is surprise me. That's it. And so I came in the next day, I had no more migraine, I sat on the steel steps of the set, I passed Hal Ashby and I said to him, I'm quitting. And he didn't pay any attention to me. He was directing the movie. And then Warren came up to me and I said to him, I'm quitting. And he said, what? Why? I said, you're my hairdresser. You can't tell me, Felicia, that's who I am. I'm Felicia. My hairdresser does not tell me what I see or what I think. And it can't happen. And I can't go on. And he said, listen, I've only done 6 movies. What do I know? I love you. I love you. Forget it.
And he said,
I won't ever
I'm a
tell
man.
you. And I'm a man, and I'll never tell you what to do again. And it was like, oh gosh, into the tub, warm water, heat. It was so delicious, the whole rest of it.
This book is so raw and so honest and so compelling. I have to tell people all day long, buy this book. I said yes to everything. But we could talk to you for 4 more hours about it, and we're not going to have that time because you have to go and we have to go. So I'm not even going to show the clip from What Sex Am I, because we don't have time for it.
Yes.
But I want you to tell us the story of why you made that documentary and what you learned from that. Because it started as you thought it was going to be something light.
Fun. Yeah. I thought it would be fun. We had just done a documentary, our first for HBO, on the women in Bedford who had killed.
Bedford Prison.
Bedford Prison. And it took the heart out of me. I mean, it was to leave there every day and to have women say, goodbye and know the reason they killed was because they were so abused.
Right.
So anyway, we went to La Cage aux Folles, and it was so much fun. It was so charming. It was so funny. It was so dear. I thought, I'm going to ask them if I can do something on transsexuals and see if I can get a different kind of documentary going, one that is going to be fun and flirty.
And this is 1985.
1985.
This is 30 years ago.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so HBO said yes, you know, go ahead. And the first thing I found, I went to San Francisco and we were having a meeting of transsexuals there, and one kid who was a boy and was a very attractive boy, about, you know, 18, 19. He followed me into the bathroom when I went to the ladies' room. He went to the ladies' room too. And we both washed our hands at the sink. And I said to him, listen, I am married to an Italian.
Mr. Wrong.
I am married to such a Mr. Wrong. And he loves his penis so much. Please, please don't do anything that you're going to be sorry for later. Really, really, really. And he said, you don't understand. When I wake up in the morning and I look down under my blankets, I hate what I see there between my legs. And it was like I had a transformative lesson in stepping into a totally different world in which I had to understand what he said and go from there.
And you learned a tremendous amount making all these documentaries. And I just want to give people a tip out there that you, I don't know if you're the first person to discover this, but you turned your documentaries into movies of the week,
Yeah.
which were then seen by jillions of
40
people.
million people, yeah.
And getting the message out.
And you did win an Oscar for Down and Out in America. And I don't know if you're the only actress to win Oscars for both a theatrical, entertaining movie
I think
and
Christine
a
Lottie. I think Christine Lottie
yes.
did too.
Okay, but
Yeah.
you did it first.
Yes, I did it. I did it first.
Yes, that's the title of the next book.
No, the title of the next book is, wait, I have something else to tell you.
Yes.
Thank you for coming. I'm sorry I have to cut this off.
Oh, too. I want to
we're
keep
out of
talking.
time.
I want to keep
I know.
talking.
Me
All
too.
right, you'll come back.
Yes, I will. I will,
Okay.
happily.
We're here every week.
Okay. Okay.
But we have to go now, and we wish you all a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. We'll be here next week, but thank you to Lee Grant, who is spectacular. Her book is spectacular. I said yes to everything. You'll be doing yourselves a real favor if you
Christmas shopping. Christmas.
Yeah, that's
in the-
right. Okay, 1 week left. Thank you, Lee,
Thank you, Anne.
and we'll see you all next week.